Next up, we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to focus on leadership in the digital era. And so please join me in welcoming Marcoss Jimenez, the CEO for the US and Canada of SoftTech, in a conversation moderated by one of our very own from Miami, Jane Wooldridge, who is the business and visual arts editor of the Miami Herald.
I'll go to the right.
Jane and Marcoss.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Happy to see, oh good, hi. Happy to see everybody on this fine Monday afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great. We are going to talk about a topic that I know everybody is interested in because everybody, I think, struggles a little bit with it. And that's the concept of leadership. It's really not so difficult to be one of the guys. It's a lot harder to be the guy whose words have weight. And so let's start with a conversation about how did you get started in this industry? What's your background? You know, how do you get to where you sit today?
Well, I tried to make it a short story. It's a long story, but well, I studied engineering, electronic engineering out of Mexico. I graduated and started working for a couple of companies before SoftTech. And then I joined SoftTech in 1994, 26 years ago, sort of.
Right.
1992, actually. So, and the company was already some sort of a business incubator. They didn't know, we didn't know, but the behavior was mostly like that.
Right.
Basically, you join the company, became partner, and if you wanted to do a business, you can start up a business. So I started a business in Peru, because in Mexico, they already tapped the market. So I went to Peru, started up SoftTech in Peru. And then in 1996, I came to the US with other friends to create SoftTech in the US.
Now, if I recall this properly, and I know this because I was working at an internet startup in the early and mid 90s, the internet was this amorphous concept. There were lots of people who didn't have email. The internet was a dial-up thing that didn't work anytime you wanted it to. There's been a lot of change since then, thankfully. And when I think about the skill set it takes between then and now to lead a group of people, most people don't make it through that transition. For you, what have been the keys to making it through that transition, to growing from that time to this time, as you've been leading a company doing that?
Well, I think I was fortunate to get into a company where the culture was always being sort of entrepreneurial. Just to give you an idea, as a person, as an executive, I never had an office like, you know, a regular job. Mm-hmm. We have an office like a collaboration space. We have an office for our associates and our partners to go and create business opportunities. So in a way, we were ahead of our time when thinking about how we wanted the company to be. It was mostly how can we be the only Mexican company, or one of the Mexican companies, in this case is the only one, that could really be a global player. We could be competing globally, we could be serving clients in different markets, and be one of the best. And that was sort of the vision we had. And the culture is very into helping each other and educating our associates and employees to really aim for the same things. And I think that's kind of what takes us to places where we never thought we could be.
Okay, but you and I talked about the idea, you know, usually we all always have these conversations before we actually sit down in front of you. And we had this conversation about this idea that usually when companies are going from that startup stage to a more mature company, that usually some outsiders get brought in to take over that next operational role. Tell us what happened in your company.
Well, as I said, we were young, and then we grew very fast in the 90s. and then the dot-com wars came in. Before the dot-com wars, we were trying to do what you just said, brought some executives from more seasoned
Right.
industry to help us go to the next step. As soon as we started to have financial trouble, because at the end of the 90s we started to, get projects canceled. I think we were not ready to manage a global company. We were lucky, though, to work with clients such as GE, because GE culture was educating vendors to be sort of educated in lean, educated in process improvement, educated into how they can do better, incrementally. So long story short, after the dot-com wars, we had to reinvent our company from scratch. We lost a lot of revenue. We lost a lot of good people. And the people that will remain in the company, managing the company, decided that number one, we need to focus on quality, because quality was the best. We needed to focus on digitization, using technology more to manage our company, and then growth. And we turned around the business in 2004, and we multiplied the size in like more than 10 times after that. And now we are thriving into much larger opportunities. And I think we had to learn by heart. Quite honestly, I don't recommend that, because you have to learn very quickly how to manage finance, how to negotiate deals, how to restructure debt, how to do acquisitions, because we ended up acquiring a company, and more importantly, how to do all that without money, which is
Right.
interesting.
So when you think about the personal skills that it required or that have been most useful to you over the course of your career, is it working hard? Have you been mentored by somebody? Is it flexibility and adaptation? What are the skills that I think some of them are innate, maybe some of them that you had to learn to be able to roll with the punches here?
I think it's a mix of all of those, but I think the most important one is keep learning, because this industry is changing every day, and it's changing very fast. And that's what I say is keep learning, and not to be afraid of, aiming for the highest or clients or bids or opportunities, because the worst thing that could happen is that you lose. But if you win, you will completely transform. So I think that's the most important thing. I always try to achieve things that are way higher than we think. And that's how we compete against. We are, as I told you, we are not a minority company. We're 100%, I would say, owned by a foreign company. So now many of the executives, we are US citizens, but we compete against the largest, head to head. There is no shortcut on that. And I think that kind of ambition helps us to do more and to overcome obstacles that come naturally within the industry in which we are.
What's your company's approach or attitude toward failure? I think, anytime you're pushing the envelope, you're pushing the borders, some things work and some things they don't. So how do you deal with that internally in terms of the way you talk with employees and your management team?
Oh, definitely, we lost more opportunities than we win. I would like to be the other way, but it's learning. It's every opportunity that we compete for, and we every challenge that we take and we fail, for us is learning experience. But that's something it's not a problem in our company, because that's the way we started. When this sort of business incubator era, what happened is that most of the businesses we had, they failed. To be honest, most of them, they failed. And the few ones that were successful enabled us to go to another stage.
So when you think about giving advice to other leaders of technology companies, what advice would you give them?
Usually I try to tell them to think out of the box, because I have something that I always say, Camila, my CMO in the company, is we want to be unique and different. And that's all what we need to do every day. How can we be unique and different? So for example, when we started to compete against, for business here, most of the industry, it was heading towards offshore.
Right.
So we created nearshore. So after that, now, this industry changed a lot and grew significantly. Now we're thinking about automation first. So it's not about the short anymore. It's about how can you do this better and faster than any other one. And we're getting into more business and getting more invitations to grow up.
So as you grow, as you push the envelope, how do you retain employees? Because it's easy for people to get tired, that constant push. What advice do you have around employee retention?
Wow, that's a challenge, as you said. Especially in this industry that talent is very, very rare and scarce. I think being down to earth, I think that creating an environment is not only how much you pay, but actually how much do they enjoy working for a company. So what we try to do is again, foster our culture, keep people engaged into what we do, so they want to stay. So they want to be part of the new things we're getting every day, the opportunities that we're working on, the new projects that we're creating. We're sort of now creating our corporate business incubator, so we can keep people engaged into bringing new ideas, and if they are successful, we fund some of these ideas.
And how do you communicate that culture? Because I think, there are companies where everything's done by email. There are companies where everybody's supposed to walk around the room and stand by the water cooler, which doesn't work if you don't have a water cooler. So how is it that you've found, what kind of communication is most effective?
That's a challenge also. I think we use whatever we can use. We use email, we use social networks, we have our own corporate sort of collaboration platforms. So we tried a little bit of everything, to be honest, because keeping people communicating, it's always a challenge. So, but everybody in our human capital area, they are very creative. We even have something that we call the soft tequiadas, for example, where we create sports events across the year in different countries in which we operate. And the finalists, we take them to a beach place so they can do the final. So they are very creative into keeping people engaged and communicated.
So one of the conversations that we have sometimes in Florida and is South Florida, and we depends on where you are on this continuum, people talk about either it's really great to find talent here or it's really difficult to find talent here. You're based here even though you have operations far and wide. So what's your view of the talent situation in South Florida?
I think it's a lot of talent. I think for us, and here, as you mentioned, even though we have our office, main office here, we don't have a lot of employees here, but we never struggle to get talent. I'm amazed about the quality of the talent we have from UM or FIU, some of these universities. They are very creative, especially now in this kind of industry. I think never struggle for that. I mean, here and there are some very unique skills but you cannot find those skills easy anywhere.
So how would you define your job as a leader? Is it setting a strategy? Is it growing the business? Is it communicating? Is it all of the above? What does it take to have the job that you have?
It's a little bit of all of the above, but I think more importantly is a leader should be 3 or 4 steps ahead. The way I see leaders is how can I show and say, hey, this could be a risk. It's sometimes being sort of advisors. So you also need to somehow expose, I would say, the people working with you onto becoming the leaders. So we don't believe in bosses in our company. We believe in, like Blanca, my leader. We talk on what's up, a lot of stuff. And if we need to have a review, we set an appointment. But it's not like the autocratic sort of leadership. We believe that you need to create spaces for people to do what they need to do, and then you give some sort of advice. And sometimes you, of course, need to say, oh, this is not good, but it's exposing them into how can they do better, how can they really bring more to the company. That works amazingly. I mean, Camila, she does a lot of stuff here that I never thought she could do. And that's the kind of things you achieve when you tell people, we need to execute this. And they amaze you when you give them more space.
Okay, but there's a flip side to that coin. Anybody who's ever had to work in a team in a college project knows that there is sometimes the person who doesn't do their part. And in a collaborative work environment, I mean, the old autocratic system, it was pretty clear. You didn't get to the plate, out you go. That's not the way business works now, because we are finding that collaborative environments are generally more productive. But what do you do when there's somebody who just isn't pulling their weight?
First of all, I think what we learned by heart, I was working here, I remember this client, you need to lead by example. We were having a critical deadline, as you said, and the person that was supposed to deliver something didn't. So the good thing when you have a team is that, hey, this is not coming out. We need to work out. So I was working with all the team on the night to fix it, and the team supported me. So, I mean, blaming somebody for not doing something is not going to fix anything. So what we do with the team is, let's put our hands together and let's fix it together. And that works perfectly. And so that's some sort of the culture. And then you take decisions of what happened with the other person. They may have had a personal problem. They may have just find out what happened. Mm-hmm. But in the moment, you just need to deliver. And that's what we achieve with the team.
What's the hardest part of your job?
Well, the hardest part probably would be the time that I spend out of my family sometimes, out of home, because that kind of job requires me to travel a lot and to spend a lot of time. And that probably is the hardest because, you know, sometimes I'm out the whole week and just see the kids on the weekend. I think other than that, I mean, there are challenges everywhere. I enjoyed all of those, but probably that would be the hardest.
So how do you achieve that balance when you've got this weight of responsibility of being the guy who everybody's looking to, and you've got other people in your life who would occasionally perhaps like to see you? How do you make that balance? How do you keep from having your head explode?
Well, I think it's about finding time for specific things. Like, you know, this weekend I brought my kids. My daughter, she's almost graduating for business entrepreneurship in Houston. So my kid is in Boston, just starting 1 year. So try to find a space for us and be together in important dates and spend some time together. But as anything, I think it's planning. I mean, balance doesn't going to happen if you don't plan time together. So we try to plan our time together and early on, they understood this kind of, job that I had. So we tried to take the best out of, the days that we have together.
When you talk to other firms and they're thinking about, they want to push the envelope, they want to assume some risk, but they also need to manage that risk as they're innovating. What advice do you give them?
First of all, I think risk is it's a matter of, I think, identifying the potential points of failure and how big or not they could be and how can you mitigate it. I think the good thing in our business, for example, we know that the main risk is about people and experience they have doing some things. So what we use is methodology so we can sort of identify where those risk areas are and how we can prevent those risks from happening. So there are multiple risks. Imagine we manage very complex portfolios of applications for, let's say, for example, an airline, and we need to prevent in advance risks from happening. So that's what we try to advise our clients into. Try to identify what exactly could be the potential areas of risk and define processes to prevent them. And if they happen, how they could react. And for example, if somebody is very critical to provide some service, so we are starting, since we start working with clients, we start training backup 2 or 3 people to do what they need to do in case of this person is not available.
So I'm sorry, my phone is going off. My husband's been in the hospital and it's not him, so we're not going to worry. Did you have any, mentorship is a big topic these days. Did you have mentors in your career, and how did that work? Or alternatively, do you feel that mentorship is important from a leadership standpoint as you deal with the next group of people coming along?
Absolutely. I think probably I didn't, back in the day, was aware that they were mentors, but definitely many of the partners that I'm doing business with, they were ahead on some things. They were always trying to, teach me about how to do things. I mean, just example, I'm an engineer. I never had sold anything in my life. So when I moved to Peru, there was no internet. There was nothing. There was not even this concept of business incubator. So I had to go and knock on doors and try to sell projects because I wanted to have a business. So facing those fears, a person in the company his focus was human development, helping me a lot to say, hey, listen, you need to recognize that you are having fears. It's not about them. So why don't you work on yourself on getting to know you better and overcome those fears? And that helped me a lot because then I learned that when you are doing sales, for example, 90% of the people, they are going to reject you. But if you get 10%, that is going to make the whole difference. So I absolutely believe in mentorship. Now I think it's more established and recognized than before, but absolutely.
When you think about all the things you've had to learn in your career, you just talked about one of them, how to deal with sales. What's been the hardest part? What's been the hardest thing to learn?
Probably that's the hardest thing. How can you develop a market and how you can compete? Because technically it's not a challenge. We know that we have a good reputation, good professionals, good tool, technologies and methodology, but competing outside, I had to learn more about how can you engage at a higher level, how can you develop your executive network, how can you influence people so they can give you opportunities. So I think that's one of the hardest things I had to learn when I started to do more business in my career. How can you leverage your network and create a network that can help you, do more business?
So when I think about all these changes that you've had, I'm impressed, I have to say, but I wonder when you sit now and you've been through this trajectory, you look at people who are just starting now, and maybe they're starting out as a very small team or an individual entrepreneur. What advice would you give them?
Well, it's people nowadays are becoming very prepared, I would say. I mean, think about my daughter. She studied marketing. She was part of the entrepreneurship program also in the university. I see videos from her pitching audiences, and I said, wow, she's so good. I mean, it's so hard to advise kids now, to be honest. I think probably the best advice is that I've learned and share that to them is human development. It's about keeping down, and try to learn about yourself. Because it's very easy to get, lost on what's going on. I think if you learn about yourself, you learn about your fears, you learn about how you can do better. And that's the advice I give my daughters, for example, that say, okay, what are the things you can do better? And I think it's working out for her.
Okay. So when you look at sometimes, millennials, better and worse, get a bad rap. When you look at young people coming into the market today, do you really think they're any different from when we were young? Or is their experience significantly different that you deal with them differently than we were dealt with? What's your view on that?
Well, I think at the end of the day, I see them as people. I see them that they are bright, they want to do things, and I probably relate a lot to them because I was like them at some point. That's why I ended up in Peru and then in the US, because I wanted to do more things. So probably I think I don't see like this some sort of a shock. Of course, now there is a lot more technology than it was before, and they are more, I would say, the amount of knowledge that they now can have access to very quickly, it's just impressive. You don't know something, they Google, they got 3 or 4 sources in the moment. As I told you, when I was starting a business, it took me 3 or 5 days to find out where to find a list of companies to do business with in Peru. So, so I see that, this generation, you just need to give them a space for them to create new things.
So what are the top skill sets? If you were going to say to anybody who's aiming for the C-suite, what are the top 3 or 4 skill sets you'd say they need to develop?
Well, there is the technical piece of what we do, which, of course, we look for people they want to learn, and they are fast learners. We don't look for the people that are experienced because many of the things that we work on, there is no experience. So, but if you have the attitude to learn and the interest to learn, I think you can do a lot. So that's the number 1 skill we look, how people want to learn. The second one has to do with people they like, social skills. They like to work in a team. Despite having individual interests, as you said, they can collaborate and be part of a team because a lot of the things we do, it's a teamwork. It's not just, we don't have only, A players. Everybody's important to deliver many complex technology projects. So that's probably the second thing, their ability to work as a team. And then we help them to further develop, interpersonal skills. We have programs in the company that help them communicate better, that helps them to learn more about themselves and achieve more activities or milestones.
When I talk to CEOs, frequently they tell me that one of the biggest struggles that they have with workers who have grown up with the phone in their hand is that they're so accustomed to texting and emailing that they don't actually know how to talk to one another, which I sometimes see at my own dinner table. I'm wondering if we've ever had a conversation. Do you find that to be a problem, or have we kind of gotten past that moment where everybody's, I text all the time, I admit it, but have we moved beyond that, or is that still a skill set that's getting a little bit lost in the shuffle, that ability to converse?
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting you said, but I don't know. I don't think texting is a thing of the millennials, by the way. I think it's
Me either.
I don't know why, but I have dinners where people is just think that's I think that it's a way of achieving things. It's a way of how you organize to achieve whatever you need to achieve and give people space to do it. Because I don't think you can control how people communicate. You won't control that, unless you are in the military probably, where you need to follow very strict rules. But if you are in the commercial side and doing business, you need to take the best out of people, and that's the way you need to do it.
So as the head of, how many people are in your division?
About 5,000 people.
Okay. With 5,000 people in your division, how many people are your direct reports?
My direct reports probably are around 10 people.
And do you feel like that's the right number? Is that too many? Is that not enough? Is that what you'd advise someone else to do?
For me, it's the right number. I think it has to do with your, I think leadership is, there are leaders that they want to have more, micromanagement sort of style. So they spend more time with each person. I'm not like that. I try to just set up goals, coach, do product reviews, meetings, spending time together on clients, and sort of leading by example. So for me, I think 10 is a good number, but probably some people would argue that it's too much or too few. I know some people, they have 20. I don't know how they do it.
No, I think the last I checked, the official literature all says 10 is about the maximum. So it sounds to me like plenty of people to keep up with.
Okay.
So when you look going forward, you've pretty much reached this pinnacle of what many people hope to achieve in a career. What's your next set of goals look like?
Well, probably I will start working more in the investor community. I'm investing in a couple of startups, and that's sort of what now interests me more, probably moving more into working in our sort of business incubator, doing more, I would say, put more focus on that, doing more entrepreneurship, helping entrepreneurs to accelerate their business ideas or bring their business ideas into reality. That's probably what I will do next.
So there's always this big topic about, will you ever retire? Do you ever retire? Do people of our generation ever even consider retiring? Do you imagine that you will work in some way all of your life? Do you imagine someday that you'll go off to play golf? What does the future look like?
You know what, I think retiring, I don't know how exactly it will be, but I think I will do different things, of course, at some point. Probably pretty soon doing some, as I said, now I would like to focus more into entrepreneurship and fostering more development of entrepreneurs within our company and probably within Mexico. I would like to enjoy more time playing golf, of course. I like golf. More time with my family, of course. I don't see myself as somebody just doing nothing. Probably I will still do something even, no matter how old I am. Probably have more time with my family, for sure.
I think many of us share that idea that you can never really stop being active and learning and thinking about the next way to do something.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for your time today, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
I must say that.